It's your bandito Carlitos coming at you with a part 2. You know I love me some Pat Shahghoi. Let's dive right in. If you didn't see the first video, Pat Shahghoi is a 16-year-old 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu prodigy that recently won the 10th Planet Qualifiers tournament, earning a spot into the EBI Absolute tournament this weekend. So, yeah. Today I want to talk about Pat Shahghoi's leg lock offense, but also his passing, because his reputation as a counter leg locker gives him a set of very unique advantages over his opponents in the guard passing exchange. The first thing that separates Pat from every other standing passer out there is that Pat actually wants to be balls deep in a leg entanglement, so he will step into potential entries for his opponent. Pat's always ready for the leg lock firefight, so he's constantly baiting his opponents, and many of them choose to completely disengage after initially attacking his legs. And honestly, for very good reason. He's incredibly skillful at taking his opponent's backs off the no bolo, and even when he doesn't get the back, he ends up right where he wants to be, deep in the pocket of a leg lock exchange. Pat is so confident he will intentionally stand after he's passed to give his opponent the opportunity to attack his legs just so he can attempt the bolo. Pat loves to step on the mat at his opponent's hip, using it to pass their guards as they hesitate to attack his legs. And at the very least, he'll use his foot position to pressure his opponent's back and get top position. Sometimes he comes across an opponent that won't allow him this foot position, or they use it against him, lifting his foot into the air in order to get the sweep. In both cases, his response is the same. Step 1 is get on top. He likes to do this by using a very shallow spiral guard entry, just shallow enough to get underneath his opponent's ankle and allow him to get on top. What's really cool is Pat will also do this shit in reverse. He'll start the entry, and as his opponent anticipates the inversion, he'll turn back to his feet and get top position. Once on top, Pat will pressure pass with control over his opponent's ankle, quickly sliding in for an entry and almost instantly revealing his opponent's heel. If you watched my breakdown on Elizabeth Clay, then you're aware of our 3-part heel hooking criteria. Even though this position looks very unorthodox, Pat still manages to meet all of them. Most clearly, we can see that Pat has a proper bite on the opponent's heel, with the heel directly underneath the wrist and the toes trapped in the armpit. We can also see his hip control with the left leg draped over his opponent's hip, and then with the right leg on the outside, we can see that around the opponent's knee, which prevents the opponent from rotating out of the heel hook. At this point, most of us are pretty familiar with the concept of using a leg lock entry to gain top position. Pat will intentionally allow his opponents to recover guard just so he can attack an estima as they pummel their feet in front of him. The estima lock is one of many tools up Pat Shahghoi's sleeve used to catch his opponents by surprise in the leg exchange. Another counter opponents don't expect is his mirror lock entry off the underhook in 50-50. And as the opponent triangles their legs, Pat chains another unorthodox submission, the Aoki lock. As you can see here, the Aoki lock is a hybrid between the ankle lock and the heel hook, using the grip advantages of the ankle lock as well as the rotational pressure of a heel hook in combination to create a devastating submission. It's important to remember that Pat isn't all counters, with plenty of creative leg lock entries of his own. Here we watch Pat finish a 50-50 heel hook with a very simple yet effective setup. Before his opponent can cross their legs, Pat stops this by getting a deep underhook underneath his opponent's top leg. He reinforces this with his opposite hand gripping the opponent's knee to help separate both legs as he looks to reveal the heel. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, motherfucker can wrestle too. Now let's take a look at the lineup and see where Adultslayer stacks up. My first thought was, Adultslayer, he's got his work cut out for him. There's Isaac Michelle, there's Nick Rodriguez, Al Bame, Giancarlo, Austin Baker, who's a bad motherfucker. I mean, there's a lot of bad dudes in this tournament. But the more I thought about it, the more I took some time to try to research some of these guys, the more I felt like Adultslayer actually stylistically matches up pretty well with just about everybody in this tournament. So let's first take a look at Isaac Michelle. Now, Isaac Michelle is known for being a very high-level wrestler, but at the same time, he's also a student of Craig Jones. We also saw him in an incredibly long, no-time limit match against Kyle Chambers. In that match, there was plenty of very long leg lock exchanges, long leg lock battles, and if Isaac Michelle even attempts to get into this game, he's immediately falling into the best possible case scenario for Adultslayer. Now let's also take a look at Giancarlo Bodoni, who, in my opinion, is the favorite for this tournament. I mean, I don't know too many people on the planet that can give Giancarlo a hard time. And at the same time, I mean, against, what's his name, Egan Flanagan, they got into a leg lock exchange. Granted, Giancarlo won that exchange, but still, it plays right into Adultslayer's game. I mean, the more we take a look at this, Kyle Bame, another great leg locker. Any one of these guys, if they get into a leg lock firefight with Adultslayer, he has the advantage. That's just my opinion. I feel like with his level of confidence, that's the best possible place for him to fight any of these guys, is in a leg lock exchange. I feel like any of these guys instantly become human the moment they sit down and square up in the pocket with Adultslayer. With as many leg lockers in this tournament, I feel like the rest of the division needs to be far more concerned about avoiding Pat Shahghoi's game than he is about avoiding theirs. Now, if we take a look at some of the more positionally savvy grapplers, guys like Nick Rodriguez, guys like Dan Martinez, Steven Martinez, these are the guys that I feel like stand the best chance to shut out Adultslayer. I mean, this might sound kind of crazy, but I actually don't think anybody here finishes Adultslayer. I feel like Adultslayer does a very, very good job at avoiding pinning positions. I also feel like he does a very good job at keeping the match in his area of comfort zone. So I don't necessarily feel like anybody's going to finish him per se in regulation. I do feel like some of these guys, Dan Martinez, Nick Rodriguez, Elder Cruz, I feel like a lot of them have a really good chance at potentially beating him on ride time. He has gone to OT a few times, and both times he did so in the qualifier tournaments, he went all the way to the end of the overtime rounds. That to me is the most concerning thing about watching Adultslayer, is just the lack of finishes in OT. With all that being said, my final prediction for the EBI Absolute Tournament is Giancarlo Bodoni as my favorite to win the division, and Pat Shahghoi, the Adultslayer, as my dark horse. He, in my opinion, is the one variable that I feel like could shake everything up. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Peace!